It's one level of soothing to think I can help my kid through anything, but it's 10 times as soothing to think my kid can get themselves out of anything.
Welcome to the Parent Compass on Smart Social Podcast, where we explore parenting themes to help our kids navigate the tween and teen years in our competitive and uncertain world. We are your hosts, Cindy Muchnick and Jenn Curtis, and today we are more than thrilled to host Kelly Corrigan.
Kelly has written 4 New York Times bestselling memoirs in the last decade. She's earned her title of the Poet Laureate of the Year of the Ordinary from Huffington Post and the Voice of a Generation from O Magazine. She is curious and funny and eager to go well past the superficial in every conversation she has. She also has a new PBS TV show called Tell Me More and a phenomenal podcast, which we hope you'll all register and support, review, sign up for, called Kelly Corrigan Wonders. Kelly, thank you so much for giving us some of your time today.
You bet. Thanks for what you guys do.
So Kelly, if our listeners could see my copy of Tell Me More, they would see a dog-eared, Post-it filled, underlined highlighter. This book is really falling apart. I have read it multiple times. I've read it out loud to my husband. I've reread chapters. I've sent copies to my friends. Tell Me More, as well as all your other books, but this one in particular just struck such a chord. And in the book, you made it so easy for your readers by sharing stories of your own teenagers, your parenting, other teens you observed, how you were parented, and even with self-reflections of how you were as a teen, all in this beautiful, honest, we feel as though we are right there with you prose. So first of all, thank you for letting us into your home, your conversations, your kitchen, your bathrooms, your bedrooms, and your world. And my first question for you is, did you realize as you were writing this book that Tell Me More is really a parenting guidebook too? That by sharing your struggles as a mom and a teen yourself, you did a huge service to, parents everywhere who pick this up, not realizing how many nuggets of wisdom you're also going to share with us?
I never thought of it in those terms, but I will say that the most interesting thing that I've ever been involved in my life is raising children. And it's so hard and so complex and so heady. And so it's the thing I'm the most interested in is what's the next right move in this house with these kids. And so it probably consumes the most mind share for me and also the most sort of conversational minutes. Like this is what I'm interested in talking about when I go on walks with my friends. And I happen to have 2 great friends who are therapists. One is an eating disorder therapist named Ariel, who I write about a lot, and Tell Me More, and who's an upcoming guest on my podcast. And the other is my best friend from college, Tracy Tuttle, who I write about in every book because she's just so core to me. And she's also in Tell Me More. And in fact, she's the person who taught me the very basic, simple directive of saying, tell me more, which is a way of stopping yourself from jumping in so quickly with your big, juicy, shiny solution that really serves to either like paper over the problem or diminish the kid's actual sense of self-efficacy. Because if I solve your problem, it sort of means like, I guess you couldn't solve it yourself, but it's all so obvious to me. And that's a terrible feeling. Like nothing is more thrilling to dig yourself out of your own hole. And so to the extent that parents want to pull them out or throw in a ladder or climb in there with them and go climb out of the hole, arm in arm, they're denying kids the world's greatest feeling, which is bad things can happen and I'll be okay. Like I can find my way out of anything. And you can't learn that if everyone's helping you all the time. It's absurdly hard to not help your kid when you can. I just want to flag that because I don't want to, everybody says this, that we're sort of hovering too much, we're helicoptering, et cetera. And the reason we do it is because it feels like love and it feels cruel to watch someone suffer. Like if someone fell in front of me on a sidewalk, like I would run to their side and lift them up and make sure they got safely to their car. Like, we're social animals. We're not built to watch people suffer. And then you're in this relationship. It's the love of your life. You're crazy about this kid. You do anything for them. You never loved anybody as much as this. And you're supposed to kind of watch them suffer. Like, that's intense. That's a crazy setup.
As I read, I wasn't aware that Tracy was in fact a therapist, but that was my thought. I wondered if she was, because, thinking back to my own experience in grad school, those are the most, foundational things that they tell you about listening, is the zipping of the lips, the nodding, and the letting the other person talk. And I loved your anecdote about your one friend who is the hit of all of the parties that he goes to, because he just sits there and he listens. And I have a friend like that too. And she is like the most beloved person that I know, because everybody feels like the most special person in the room when they are with her. And I just think, I don't know, I really resonated with that chapter too, because it is a physically taxing thing for me to sit there with my kids when they're telling me something. And I literally have to pretend like I have super glue on my lips, because it's just so hard not to fix. But I loved your comment. What I'm trying to get at is, I loved your comment about how it's actually easier to sit there and nod and be present and just listen to them talk and paraphrase back to them. And instead, as parents, we choose the harder route by, taxing ourselves and constantly trying to think of the next step and the next way to fix.
Well, I think it's a buzz. I think that coming up with solutions is a buzz. But what I try to tell myself is, that's so greedy. They should have the buzz. That if you steal it, if you jump in and solve it, then you're stealing that good feeling. And God knows, like, every teenager needs as many good feelings as they can get. The other thing is, it's one level of soothing to think, I can help my kid through anything. But it's 10 times as soothing to think my kid can get themselves out of anything. And you'll never have that feeling if you leave the interaction and you kind of solve the problem. You'll never have that second higher level of soothing that every parent truly wants and needs, and is the actual job. That's the job description. Raise people that can take care of themselves. The other thing that Tracy pointed out to me, because I talk about this car ride where Georgia called and she was upset about something, and Tracy said, just say, go on. Say, what else? Say, tell me more. A lot of times when you get kind of the headline from somebody about something that's bothering them, if you jump in with your solution or suggestion, you're probably a little bit wrong. Like, they just haven't told you enough for you to actually solve the problem yet, because most people's problems are kind of complex, and there's like a lot of context that's super relevant to why they're mad at their boss, or why they think they want to quit their job, or why they're worried that their daughter's dating the wrong person, or whatever. It takes more than a couple sentences for you to be able to give them valuable, relevant advice. But it's so annoying to be with someone who wants to come up with like the snap judgment, that a lot of people will say, oh, yeah. And they'll let you think, oh, you really helped her. But you didn't. She just didn't feel like listening to you anymore. And she could tell that you weren't going to ask any more questions, and that you were so flippin' sure of yourself, and so it's so dismissive. So the thing that Tracy helped me really think about is the thing behind the thing behind the thing. That whatever the first thing they say is bothering them, that's not the thing. There's a thing behind that and a thing behind that. And you're going to have to ask like 5 questions minimum to get anywhere where you could actually be valuable.
Kelly, thank you for summing it up that way, because my own 14-year-old daughter, tells me to zip my lip. Like, Mom, I just want to tell you this. And you just posted on Twitter a couple days ago something you learned from your own podcast, Kelly Corrigan Wonders, from your Common Ground podcast. You posted, people go understandably crazy when they think their children are threatened, number 1. And number 2, it's an act of courage to think differently from your parents. And I would love to have you talk a little bit more about that. The first one, is the mama bear that we just were talking about, and the protective and the wanting to fix and wanting to help, and by saying too much, sometimes creating more damage. But that second one about thinking differently from your parents, in the Parent Compass, we kind of force our readers in our first 2 chapters to look back at their upbringing and their own parents and how they parented, and try to figure out how to apply what worked and what didn't work, and their own preconceived notions and their own biases and birth order and backgrounds academically, etc. You talk a lot about your parents in your books and how they parented versus how you parent versus how your teens may someday parent. Could you share with us kind of that concept of being courageous and thinking differently from those people who raised us?
For sure. Well, anyone who's married and raising children with another person knows that it can be like the battle of the backgrounds. Like in my house, we set a timer when we made pasta. And in my house, we just keep taking little bites of pasta until we figure out whether it's ready or not. And you can just extrapolate that to everything. And there's a deep, deep desire that's probably subconscious to believe that the way we were raised was the right way, or at least like right enough. And so there is this, it seems so predictable to me that there would be conflict between me and Edward about Christmas presents, for instance, which we just had a huge argument last night about Christmas presents. And, my values are coming to the floor, and I'm convinced that I'm right. I'm convinced the way my mom did it, which was very few presents, that hopefully would be memorable enough that you would be able to name what you got last year right around this time. And the way his parents did it. And then, of course, what couldn't be more predictable as well is that the culture is going to change. For a really obvious example, like things your parents said about Orientals, for instance. Like my mom would say, like, oh, well, we have some Oriental neighbors. And I'm like, Mom, well, they don't Asian. And to her, it's like, whatever, like, I don't mean anything by it. It's just that was the name that we called them. I mean, you could go to much more marginalized groups like LGBTQ, and you could go to really huge cultural shifts. I have a friend who's a single mom on purpose. She went to a sperm donor. That's very trippy for my mom. And that was very trippy for my friend's grandma. So this reckoning is coming. And the reckoning involves, what about my parents was terribly wrong? What about my husband's parents might be right? And how am I going to write my own rules here? And that's like a tremendous amount of thinking. That's like headache level thinking, if you ask me, because there's just so much there. And there's so much unconscious pull toward believing that what you were given was kind of the right thing to be given or told. And it's very painful to think like, God, my parents were like really wrong about X, Y, or Z. So it is an act of courage to say, what about my childhood am I going to continue? And what about it am I going to reject? It's another super obvious area of adoption or rejection is religion. I was raised going to church every Sunday. I was Catholic. We did confession. I had my first communion. I had godparents that sent me presents every year. It was like this foundational part of our routine and our week and our thinking. And we don't do that in our house. And that's a big decision. And so, yeah, for sure, it's part of the equation. And that's why I said at the top that the most complex, interesting thing I'll ever be involved in is parenting. And it's partially for reasons like that, because it's pulling in my marriage, it's pulling in my childhood, it's pulling in values and dreams that I developed on my own. I'm a Democrat. My parents are Republicans, and my brothers are Republicans. So I'm a lone Democrat, a lone crazy California liberal, who like eats kale and drinks fancy hard kombucha and just does so many things that are so ridiculous to my family of origin. So all that, I just think our childhoods exert like an incredible amount of influence over us, whether we realize it or not, whether we hated it or whether we kind of loved it, or whether we think it was definitely better than the way our spouse was raised. That's a really weird thing, is that people are judging each other's childhoods, but they weren't there. They're only judging the version of it that you've told them. And then all the extrapolating they do by observing you with your family of origin. But that's intense, like to feel like, well, no, like it was good. It was really good, you know?
Yeah, that's deep, hard stuff. It comes up obviously in pretty much every marriage. And I never would have known, my husband and I had very similar upbringings with, loving families, and fortunate to have parents that had been, have been married for many, many years. And I think, Kelly, you and I are in a similar age group. Jen's kids are a little bit younger than ours, but I never would have known that geography would have played such a major role in my marriage, and which set of grandparents we wanted to try to live closer to, and how could we, balance that out and give fair time to both. And it was something I never would have anticipated would have become actually like a sticking point in my marriage, because
Sure.
it seemed so similar. Like we just love both of our parents and we're so loyal to them and so fiercely committed to each set of grandparents. And I love my in-laws, and my husband loves my parents too, but we still have that loyalty, that painful root that sort of keeps pulling you back to, your own upbringing. So thank you for being willing to share that.
You know what comes up now as your kids are getting out of high school and into college is values and norms around drinking, values and norms around what you pay for and what you make them pay for. Like, what is the off ramp from your being financially dependent on you to being financially independent? I think that my children and my husband probably think I'm a hard ass on finances, but it's really deep in me that I am not doing them any favors by giving them money at this stage. They're both eminently capable of earning tons of money. They do not need me to pay their cell phone bill. I should not be buying them technology. Like, you have got to. So, but we have this a lot, and Edward, a really interesting thing that we disagreed on, it's probably the longest disagreement of our whole marriage, was whether to join this country club. So there's a country club near our house. This is total first world problems I'm flagging it for myself, so you don't even need to talk about how ridiculous it is. If you could
No
just
judgment.
past the money part of it and just to the issue of it, was I said, I don't want to belong to that country club, because I just want the girls to know, like, it doesn't matter. And he said, my whole life we didn't belong to the country club, and I had to wait to see if somebody would invite me to go swimming on a hot day. And it made me crazy. And I always felt self-conscious about it. And if I can do this, he's like, first of all, I want to swim. I want to play tennis. And he uses it every single day. He won the argument, and he's an athlete, and he uses it as an athlete would. But I just hadn't thought of it that way. That, like, they're literally just going to be waiting to see if Lucy will invite them to go swimming. And that he just couldn't bear to do that if he didn't have to. But that's the thing behind the thing behind the thing. And that's Tell Me More. Because we talked about that stupid club for 5 years before we joined it, because it took him 5 years to say that. And it took me 5 years to ask enough questions to get to the heart of it. Because at first it was just like, I'm being cheap, and why are you worried about this? And, I did the numbers and it's all fine, and we live below our means and whatever. And then it was like, oh, this isn't about that.
Wow. Kelly, wow, this is really becoming even like a marriage talk. Let's switch gears a little bit.
You can't talk about kids if you can't talk about marriage.
There's two passages in particular that I thought maybe you could comment on. One happens after a really enormous explosion that you share with us as a mother regarding the toilet and the dog. And you write in italics in the book, your thoughts: what is wrong with me? I celebrate my spunky daughters on Instagram, but privately smash their spirits to bits over a trivial mistake, like not jiggling the handle on an old toilet it might be time to replace. What have I done? And then you talk about, I perfectly modeled all the things I've been railing against for years: accusing, overreacting, spazzing, and then you admit you embarrassed yourself in front of your husband. And are you really a great mom? And I want to thank you for sharing your honesty. And how do your girls, who are teenagers now and probably have some opinions on what you post and what you don't post, how are they with you sharing? Is that just part of the deal of being Kelly Corrigan's daughter? Or are there certain times when they say, Mom, I'm drawing the line here, or can you share that with us? Because that's always a struggle for parents.
So far, it's been a non-issue. Like, I think they're probably just coming into consciousness that I might be writing something today about something that happened yesterday. Like, everything is very in the past for them. Like, what's written and published right now is kind of old, because by the time you write a book and then edit a book and then get the cover done, and you just did it, and get it out into the world, like years and years have passed. And so whatever they've seen from our family, I mean, first of all, I had their permission, but second of all, it seems like such like ages ago. But in terms of posting on Instagram, like right now, I'm pretty limited actually in what I can post. They often say, no, I don't want you to. It's funny because I think tons of their friends follow me, which is a funny, weird thing to be aware of. And I'm a lacrosse coach at their high school, so that has put me in the milieu of their crew in a different way than most parents, I guess. And so they really don't want me on there bragging. Mostly it's bragging. Like, they don't want me but look at my cute girls, or can you believe this pie Claire made, or something like that. Like, it's really, they've got to be out of the frame.
I think that pie looked really good the other day, by the way. No, I'm just kidding.
Was that amazing? That was amazing. I mean, I have never made a pie, but that was pie from scratch. Like,
yeah, it was. I saw it bubbling. I'm a fan of anyone baking. That's impressive.
So one of the things that resonated with me the most was your chapter on no. One of my really good friends who I consider a wise friend has always told me, she calls it flexing your no muscle. And I've always kind of carried that phrase with me. And when I'm working with kids, I really try to impart that on them. And I loved your whole anecdote about your mom and how she said no a lot, and how, people looked at her a bit differently. Why would you say you do it different from your mom? And what have you learned from that experience and from saying no?
The older I get and the more experiences I have on my own that my mother had with me, the higher on the pedestal I put her. And the thing that I deeply admire was her willingness to be unpopular at a micro level, like in our house. She was really willing for me to be very, very mad at her, which I just find difficult. I just want to make up so badly and so fast. If Georgia were to stomp upstairs and close the door, I would be at that door with cut apples and a glass of water. I mean, I couldn't stand it. And by the time I opened the door, she's like been on TikTok for half an hour. She's not even feeling any feelings, but my mom's ability to just let it ride, like let your kid be mad and let them be disappointed. And it's fine that you don't give them things. Like, that is part of the job. And it's not really supposed to be like a joyride. It's a job, and it has serious consequences. She was kind of willing to be unpopular more outside of our house. Like, I feel as so many women do, that we're all judging each other one way or another. And part of that comes from a very innocent, needy place, which is, am I doing a good job? Like, why is she doing it differently? If she's giving her kid an iPhone, like, should I give my kid an iPhone? And am I like hamstringing, and again, a huge first world problem, but you can extrapolate it to any scenario you want, which is when anybody makes a different decision in parenting than you do, I think it's natural to second guess yourself. And I just did not observe my mom second guessing herself very much. She seemed very sure of the way she was going to do it day in and day out. And, so many parenting books talk about consistency as this just real gift that you can give your kids. And even if you're like consistently cheap, it's better than being cheap one day and generous the next. It's knowing what's going to happen. That's the great comfort to children. It's not getting what you want. And that's how she ruled the roost. And the other thing about saying no that I think I really want to give other people is, if you're a person who can't say no, but you secretly hate the people you're saying yes to for asking you for this, that, or the other thing. Like, let's say you got asked to volunteer for something at school and you really don't want to, or you really don't have the time to. but you don't say no because it takes a village and you feel obliged and whatever. I think it would be much better if you just said no. I do, because I think sometimes the things we get asked to do are not worth doing. And so I think even if a school were to discover, oh, wow, nobody has agreed to bring in the cupcakes for the Valentine's Day party, then the school might decide, maybe we don't need cupcakes for a Valentine's party. Maybe we could have a 2-minute meditation about people we love. Maybe we could have the kids write poems to their parents. Maybe it doesn't have to be how it's always been. And we don't have to wear people down with the sort of death by 1,000 cuts that you get taking your kids K through 12. I think, it's a really important thing to think about and to consider and to dare to do.
You made a point where you said you actually have come to a place where you don't respect people who don't say no. And I find that in my own life where I have a difficult time saying no. I'm one of those people. But at the same time, the people who I do see consistently saying no, it strikes me and I'm like, wow, I want to be like that. So yeah. I think that point about where you finally came to a place where you just started to not respect those people was really honest.
Well, it wasn't that I didn't respect them. It's just that I wasn't comfortable with them because I don't trust them.
Yeah.
Because I know that secretly they're really mad at me for even asking. So what I realize is the only people I totally trust are the people who say no sometimes, because then I know if you say yes, it's for real. You want to do it. You're totally up for it. This is a good time in your life, whatever. And I don't have to think on your side of the fence. I don't have to wonder.
Kelly, if you ask us for anything, I'm just telling you right now, we're going to say yes. So just ask.
What if you hate me for it secretly? What if you hang up the phone and then you're like, God, can you believe she asked us for that? What are we doing?
No, we'll do anything for you. We love you. Okay, Kelly, I'm so worried we're going to run out of time with you. And I'm wondering if you would indulge us in a little bit of a fast money, Charlie Rose, quick question answer round where our listeners can just get some wonderful nuggets and sound bites. And you can pass on any of these if you can't come up with a quick answer. What is the go-to activity to cheer up your household?
Rummy Cube.
How about the go-to song to get your family dancing?
Battle of Yorktown from Hamilton.
Oh, good one. Quick meal, best family quick meal?
Takeout.
Great. Best tech trick to get everyone off of tech?
Put my own phone away.
Best piece of advice you can give a tween or teen parent?
More curiosity, less judgment.
Best show to binge as a family with tweens and teens?
Ted Lasso.
Oh, could not agree more. Best Corrigan family game for tweens and teens?
It's office trivia. You can just look up office trivia contest and you'll get 200 questions about the office.
Okay. Do you have a best COVID family memory?
We had our 20th anniversary a couple months into shelter in place. And so I put on my wedding dress and my husband put on his tuxedo and we did this little vow renewal with the girls and they decorated outside and we drank champagne. And then it was 3 things we're sorry for, 3 things we're thankful for, and 3 promises for the future.
Oh my God.
So beautiful. And I cried my eyes out and it was incredible.
How about best parenting advice for self-care or me time? What do you like to do?
Go for a walk with a podcast.
How about your parenting regret? I know you've written about some of them.
Making them play piano.
Most embarrassing parent moment at your kid's school?
I was the host of this lip sync contest in middle school, and the science teacher and I did it together, and we opened the show with this Eminem Rihanna song. And yeah.
Okay. How often do you thank your mom and call her or ask for help?
I call her a lot, and mostly I call and say, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry."
All right. And then this one, this is kind of like a bittersweet one, but I love one of the best passages that I highlighted in your book at the end. in the good enough chapter is that's how it works. Someone important believes in us loudly and with conviction and against all substantiation. And over time, we begin to believe too, not in our shot of perfection, mind you, but in the good enough version of ourselves that they have reflected. What would he say right now about the kind of mom you are?
Lovey, they're superstars. They're superstars. Feedback on my parenting that means the most to me because it's like mom to mom. And my dad was just such a generally enthusiastic person. But my mom was more, not withholding, but she's more discerning, I would say, about parenting. And she said to me, well, you're nothing if not a competent parent. And I was like, that is the nicest thing you could possibly say to me.
Where can our listeners find you?
Every week, I release a new episode of Kelly Corrigan Wonders. We ask one big question each month, and we answer it 4 times. And it's called Kelly Corrigan Wonders, and it's a podcast, and it's awesome.
We can attest to that. Thank you. We love you. Thank you for being here, sharing your wonderful words of wisdom. And everybody go listen to Kelly Corrigan Wonders for more of this good stuff.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.